Well, sources close to the Lewis family telling us today that what they're trying to do here is what all football fans want: win more and win more often.
It was a brilliant night in Bilbao when Spurs won the Europa League, but what has followed has been a summer of turmoil. Ange Postecoglou sacked despite winning that Europa League trophy for finishing so poorly in the Premier League. Thomas Frank, the Brentford manager, appointed as his replacement through 2028. And then over the course of the transfer window, Spurs spending $230 million, getting a couple of big ones through the door towards the end in Xavi Simons and Randall Kolomuani. But then the news coming on Thursday, Daniel Levy has stepped down as executive chairman of the football club, having been at the club for 25 years, running all of the major business dealings. Everything going on at Spurs goes through Daniel Levy, orchestrated the building of the new stadium. There you see Spurs announcing his departure of the executive chairman, Daniel Levy. And Ian, this one came through, and this one came as a real shock to me, because in some ways at boardroom level, obviously the fans represent the football club, but at boardroom level, and in terms of representing the philosophy of the club, Daniel Levy, for me, was the person who represented Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Are you surprised that this has come through, that after so many years of ingraining himself into the team, that now he goes?
Chris, I think I'm more surprised at the way this has actually been announced, how surprising it is for everyone. The shock is clearly out there. No one really expected it. Of course, there's been a few rumblings about what's going on behind Tottenham Hotspur's doors. And of course, you would expect change to happen at some point, especially into the direction of Daniel Levy when new investment does come into the football club. I think maybe you've got to consider, okay, maybe he wants to go out on his terms more than anything else. And rather than being forced out or kicked out of the door, he's making the decision to go out on his terms, at his time, whenever he wants. But for it to happen right after the transfer window closes and after the beginning of a season, when you've just appointed a new manager and fired the one who just won you a trophy for the first time in unbelievable years, it's desperately disappointing. But he has done a remarkable job. So I do agree with you there. And I think the club in general, the foundation of that football club, it's so spectacular. The stadium is just incredible. Probably the best in European football. Might even be the best in world football. And I do believe he did a fantastic job, obviously, making Tottenham Hotspur competitive. He wanted them to be close. The only thing that was lacking from his tenure outside of the business side, I would say, is the fact that he didn't win many trophies at the football club. And he'll be disappointed with that, but he absolutely can leave himself with a proud standing at that football club. What he did do for Tottenham and the Premier League, quite remarkable.
The feeling was he ran a good business, but he didn't necessarily run a winning football team. And for more on this, let's bring in our English football correspondent, James Benge, here at CBS Sports. And James, I guess my first question would be, is this for performance-related reasons? Do you think that he was sacked, or do you think that this was kind of always planned?
Well, that is complicated. I think what is certainly true, and I agree with what Ian said, that actually the signs were there, even if, like yourself, Chris, when this news came through, I was stunned. But the signs have been there beforehand. You look at the appointment of Vinay Venkatesham as the first CEO of the ENIC Levy era. That came through in April. Scott Munn was departed during the summer, as well as Ange Postecoglou. Donna Cullen, who was a very close advisor of Daniel Levy, also leaving the board. So the signs have been there. And speaking to sources sort of close to the Lewis family, who own the bulk of Tottenham Hotspur shares, it's really clear that for them, the vision here is to create a more modern club, a club that's structured in a more natural way. Daniel Levy as a sort of owner, a part owner come chairman, it really was sort of his fiefdom. Now I think we're going to see a club where the day-to-day running is by Venkatesham, who did excellent work at Arsenal, it has to be said, and it sort of funnels up to ownership, and very clear as well, the ownership of taking control of this. The Lewis family sources close to the Lewis family telling us today that what they're trying to do here is what all football fans want: win more and win more often. And I think you can almost read this as a little bit of a tussle for power, and one where the Lewis family trust has emerged successful.
James, I know you've got ears on the ground, and I'm going to dig deep for you, because I have a feeling that you know something that we don't know here with what's happening behind the scenes at Tottenham Hotspur. This screams of massive investment to me. This screams of potential ownership coming into the football club that want to spend a ton of money to be competitive, and Daniel Levy probably wasn't a part of those plans. Am I far from saying that?
You might be. I have to say, I hate to say it, Ian, but the word coming out of sources close to the Lewis family is that that's not really what they're looking at this moment. We have to acknowledge that there have been talks in recent years about investment into Tottenham. Daniel Levy led those talks, it has to be said, with Qatar Sports Investment. They cooled a while ago, though, and I think one of the interesting things about this is it is almost a sort of repositioning of Spurs away from the sort of authority of one man to a somewhat more collaborative. I mean, ultimately, it will all funnel up to the people that hold all the shares, but more of a collaborative environment and a refreshed and modern sporting setup. I don't think when you've done that, you immediately look to sell. Long term, every club has its price, and Tottenham, with their brilliant stadium, their position in London, and their status as one of the big six in England, that price would be very high. But I wouldn't be expecting there to be a sale by the Lewis family and Levy, who will still own his stake in Tottenham anytime imminently.
James, I guess my question would be is there are a lot of fans who, for as much as people do involve themselves in sort of the politics of football clubs and the way that they are run, the reputation that Daniel Levy had was ran a good business, but sometimes in the transfer market would wait until the very end to see if maybe there was a few million more pounds you could save or maybe spend at the very end. And there was an idea that maybe he wasn't quite as loose with the purse strings as some of the other big clubs. Do you feel like now that he leaves, that there was sort of a before and after, that Spurs fans can now expect in the next transfer window, be it January or next summer, that we will start to see Tottenham spend perhaps a bit more loosely than they did with Levy in charge?
I mean, they've certainly got the facilities to do that as well. They run a very low wage bill, even after those late window additions. They are really well placed on the PSR front. They have this stadium that is a money-making machine. It's really interesting, Chris, you mentioned that. I was speaking to a sporting director the other week who said all the way through a window a few years back, he knew he wanted to buy a Tottenham player. He knew that Tottenham player wanted to join his team, but he refused to bid on that Tottenham player because he knew if he did that before 7-8 hours before the deadline, he'd end up in sort of endless back and forth negotiations with Levy. There was always a sense that Levy enjoyed the negotiations as much as signing the players. And I think, his decision was, I'll just send an offer 8 hours before the deadline and I won't give him time to negotiate. He's a hard person to do business with, and that can often be to Tottenham's benefit. But it is also understandable why Tottenham fans kind of grew frustrated. They cycled through so many managers in pursuit of trophies, so many players as well, that before too long, you just conclude the owner's the problem here. We shall see how true that is. But I certainly expect it to operate in a different way because no one negotiates like Daniel Levy.
Yeah. Pretty crazy, that's for sure. Some of the dealings that went on, also some of the hirings and firings, most recently Ange Postecoglou. I mean, that was crazy as far as I'm concerned, considering you just won a trophy. You can go all the way back to Pochettino, his time in charge at the club, getting to that Champions League final, not being able to spend much money that summer. In fact, I don't even think they spent a penny that summer. Then you've got Jose Mourinho, who got fired days before a cup final, which is just crazy. Some of these decisions that happen in the mind of a human being who's got so much power, you try to understand it, but 25 years, James. 25 years as a chairman involved in a football club like this, of this stature. I mean, it's quite remarkable the job he did do. So what is his everlasting legacy for the job that he did do for Tottenham, for their supporters, and also for Premier League legacy?
It's the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's quite interesting, actually. Kind of all this conversation almost reminds me a little bit of Arsene Wenger, where at the end of this long, turbulent era, you're left with this very tactile thing that serves as their legacy. And I know for many of our viewers, you won't have had a chance to visit the Tottenham Stadium, and you'll hear myself and Ian and anyone that has been wax lyrical about it. This is one of the great venues in the world of entertainment, not just sport. And it's important to say that this is much more of a year-round facility. It hosts NFL games. It hosts Beyonce, who I've seen twice at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's one of the best places to see a concert, it must be said. I know that sometimes these are the things that wind Tottenham fans up an awful lot, but there is this real contribution to the area, which is a relatively deprived area of London. Debatable how much it changes that. But there's a contribution to the area. There's this world-class facility that Tottenham can step out in. I might say I've seen Beyonce there, but I've seen some big European games as well. And it has a sensational atmosphere. It is one of the best places to witness a sporting event anywhere in the world. And it's making money for Tottenham while doing that. That is his legacy. And for all that I do understand the frustration of Tottenham fans, because what they want is success on the pitch. They've built the most remarkable stadium in London, and I think Daniel Levy can be very proud of that. That's for sure.
And that will be his legacy, as you mentioned. But I also sometimes get a little bit wound up myself at the winding up of Tottenham fans, because I do think that that sort of financial stability is so important in the modern game. You see so many clubs go in the other direction. To have a well-run business is kind of something that you'll never sing that is kind of the joke, but it's still something. It's something that is really important. I think Tottenham will eventually come to appreciate Daniel Levy in due course.
I got to be honest with you. As soon as he mentioned Beyonce, it got me thinking, what is James Benge's best song from Beyonce?
Oh, go on.
That's quite straightforward. It's Countdown.
Okay.
From,
All right.
Fair enough.
I'm not
James
performing
Benge,
it. I'm not performing it before you ask.
We have been fully derailed. We thank you for joining us here to talk about Daniel Levy's departure from Spurs.
Good stuff, James.
And Beyonce.